Okay, Mitja, welcome. And the first question is, why wasn't it possible to create a Git on chain before? Why it wasn't possible to put an existing Git on blockchain on Everscale or some other blockchain? Why we decided to create a totally new, brand new blockchain for Git?
Yeah, the answer is there are two answers for that. One is technical, which I don't want to go right now into because we have a show about tokenomics. So let's talk about the other reason, and this reason is in tokenomics. So as you all know, anything you do on any blockchain costs some money. Yeah, sometimes called fees or gas, whatever. And there is no model today, like no economic model today on the blockchain, which permits you to do something for free. You always pay for anything you do. And the reason why you pay is partly protection against spam. So because if you would start producing millions of transactions for free, then you would stop a blockchain. You could stop a blockchain because there is no unlimited capacity on any blockchain and any computing system. So sometimes what other projects trying to do is, for example, Solana, just they make the fees very, very small, like so small that it's almost like you don't feel it. There are two problems for that. First, it's still a fee, so you still have to buy some tokens, even if it's a small amount of tokens. Yeah, you still need to buy it, so it's not free, even if it's small. But the other thing is that it doesn't protect against spam, and we saw that Solana experienced many problems related to this, where the full capacity was used. It doesn't matter if you don't have unlimited capacity. Basically, there is some limit. There is some price that someone can pay to buy out the whole blockchain, basically, which means the blockchain will exclusively work for this someone, and that means that the blockchain will stop for everyone else. So I think one of the most important contributions to tokenomics in Gosh is that we came up with the possibility to make a completely free service on the blockchain. And
right, because a Git, sorry to interrupt you, because a Git, for those who don't, maybe for those who don't know here, a Git is a free service. Developers use a Git; it's a free service. So
for open source, yeah.
For open source, it's a free service.
Okay, so Git is not a service. Git is something you install on your computer where you basically store your code and all the versions of your code, right? When you talk about service, you talk something like GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket, whatever there are. Like
right, a Git hosting platform.
Exactly. Right. So when we talk about Git hosting platform, yeah, and these platforms, it's not only relates to Git, it relates to any. Most of the business models today, when you have cloud service, usually this cloud service provides you some service for free. It's like initial some amount of whatever service they provide it for free. So for example, like Firebase or AWS, you could have like a small server from AWS for free, just to try it out, just to build your application, to test your application. And then when you scale, like when you have a lot of users, you start to have a lot of users, then you start paying. And this is a normal business model, which makes it very easy to start developing on this cloud service. This model is used everywhere, right? So when you want to build a blockchain-based service, a cloud service for Git, you must accommodate this. You must accommodate the developers who just want to start for free here.
Okay, Mitja, let's see the scheme of the tokenomics of Gosh, and you can describe briefly for us how it works, and then we're gonna go deeper and see like the details.
Sure. Well, as you said, there are like two tokens in Gosh system. One token is stable coin, and another token is like value capturing token. So the stable coin called Shell, and the value capturing token called Gosh. So there is a reason why there are two tokens. And again, I don't want to go deeper into that a lot, but just in a couple of words,
Yeah,
it's impossible.
Can you briefly cover?
Yeah, yeah, it's impossible to have one token which both captures value and has a property of money, which is like used to pay for things. Okay. Why it is important, why it is not possible, is because when you pay for stuff, you don't want, I would say this, you would be like inclined not to pay if with something that rises in value all the time, right? If, for example, if a dollar would rise in value instead of falling, like if it would be just complete deflation all the time, instead of inflation, you would have deflation, like 10% a year deflation. Think about that. So you know that what your dollar that you can buy a coffee today, tomorrow you can buy two cups of coffee. That would prevent people psychologically from spending that dollar, right? Because like who would spend dollars if it always rises in value? So that's why inflation is actually good for economic growth, as we know. It's exactly because of that. It stimulates spending. It stimulates people to get rid of money, to basically put money in somewhere where the value is created. For example, in enterprises, take money as a loan, because what you take today and you can use this loan to create your business, tomorrow you will pay less when you repay the loan, despite the fact that it has also a percentage, on the loan. But still, you take the money and invest the money easier
in something, in property, for example, also. Just
for whatever you believe it will rise in value,
right?
In Bitcoin. Well, that's exactly what's happening, right? People investing
Especially
money in
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, for example, something that will rise in value. So people believe something will rise in value. So Bitcoin, people believe will rise in value sometimes, and they buy Bitcoin with dollar. They exchange. Well, sometimes they don't. They lose believe in everything. When the economic downturn, they don't believe. But it corrects itself.
That's the moment now, yeah, right?
Right, but it corrects itself. It corrects itself. Also, if you look at the Bitcoin price, it's still 20,000 per Bitcoin, not what it was 2 years ago. Remember, 2 years ago it was like much less, right? So still, despite the fact, okay, it went to 60 whatever and then it fall, doesn't matter. It's still the basic value rises,
growing,
despite the fact that a lot of growing, a lot of people sell it, but because a lot of people will sell because they feel pressure. For example, they have some position which they need to cover, for example, and they obliged to sell this Bitcoin because whatever. But okay, the point is we need to have two tokens if we want one token to rise in value, and we want also to have token with which people would be like ready to pay each other for work or for some services, and that token need to be stable coin. Actually, if you remember, Facebook tried to do their own cryptocurrency. Like this cryptocurrency was supposed to be stable coin, right? And the reason for that is this.
Nothing is stable, right?
It's stable is relative term. Stable is relative term. Actually, it's not stable. It's losing value. It should lose the value in the perception. People should perceive that as losing value. So, for example, we know one thing that for certain will lose value. It's called dollar. Dollar is a great losing value mechanism. And so if you tied your stable coin to the dollar term, then kind of we know that it will lose value.
Okay.
So you need one token to increase in value, so people are gonna be holding it basically, right? And the other one that they will be using for the transaction. So that's basically
they will use the Gosh as well. I can. Okay, so
tokens.
let's talk about how they can use Gosh.
Let's talk about tokens.
Yeah. So why do we need Gosh if we already have stablecoin? And we need Gosh for governance. And governance is when you can like vote for things, you can influence things by just holding Gosh. So when we say holding, like you kind of have a part. This is the mechanism or the unit of account for what your portion, like personally, that you hold in Gosh project.
Is it kind of like a stakeholding?
It is a stakeholding.
Real life?
Yes, exactly. It is a stakeholding. It is a stakeholding in Gosh project, and the stakeholding it has several implications. One of them is that it is a mechanism for voting for whatever decisions someone need to make within the system for Gosh, for example. So for example, let's say the Gosh is run by some software and we want to change that software. We want to release some upgrade, some update or whatever. And who is going to decide if we're releasing this update or not?
People
so developers,
who hold, right, Gosh.
Yeah, developers and investors or whoever hold the stakeholders who hold Gosh, they are the one that the most affected by the decisions that the Gosh as a network, as a project takes. And so they need to have an influence over this decision, and the influence is measured by the amount of tokens they hold. The thing is that in order to encourage the holding, because when we talk about stablecoin, we encourage the spending. When we talk about governance tokens, we encourage the holding. Right. This, in order to encourage the holding, you need this. You need the value of the token not to fall, at least. And for it not to fall, it should actually rise. We know that. So it's like an Alice in the Wonderland. Remember, I need to run just to be in place. So it needs to rise, and in order for it to rise, there is only one mechanism that. Because the price is a demand, is a curve between demand and supply. So if we have some demand for token, the only reason it will rise in value if you have a demand is that the supply will be limited. It will be less than the demand. So that will rise, that something will rise in value. Like in Bitcoin, you have, in existence like 21 million Bitcoin will ever be more or less mined. And that means that the demand for Bitcoin supposedly to be rising over time because more and more people would like to hold it. So the same thing with Gosh, the more platform is used, the more developers are joining, the more they would like to hold part of the system so they can influence the decisions over the system, because this is the system what their project lives on. And so for that, we need that to rise, right?
That's very interesting. So you're speaking about people. You're speaking about investors who are gonna be who are gonna have Gosh tokens. You're speaking about validator, stakeholders.
Yeah.
Call them, yes, whomever you want. But it's interesting because we're now coming to the validators program on Gosh. So I just wanted to ask you a question that came up to me. So validators are gonna be same stakeholders. Is it correct? Correct, right?
Well, so yeah. In order to validate, you need to stake.
Right. That's how it works, like always.
In any proof of stake network.
In Gosh as well. Yeah. Obviously.
You need to stake. You need to hold on to token, because this is the security guarantee that you give to the network. That if you, as a validator, you will do something malicious, then you will lose your tokens. So
yeah. Right.
Okay, so now that we came to validators program, I looked into Gosh Tokenomics, so I saw that basically validators program, it's quite different from what we are usually used to on other blockchains, and that validators has some advantages, and one of those you just mentioned, right? That basically validators get the ability to choose on Gosh decisions, like to make decisions upon Gosh, right? Because they're gonna have basically.
Okay, not
ability,
so
right?
quickly. Let's separate this. So first let's talk about validation. How you can become a validator.
Validation program.
So you need to have Gosh.
Okay.
You need to put it as a stake, and you need to lock it for from 1 to 5 years, like 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And each the longer you like stake it, the more like percentage per year revenue you will get.
More
Like it starts from 8%, right? Yeah, 8% first year up to 24 yearly return, like yield, if you look at for 5 years, right? So this is different in a way that it combines how the usual like DeFi protocols work with the proof of stake, because usually proof of stake, it's simpler than that. You just you lock tokens in stake, you stake tokens, and then for the whatever period you want, and then you can exit at any time, right? But this is this model is just basic proof of stake model, but we didn't want to do that because we wanted to make it tighter the what happens afterwards, what you can do with the token, not only just stake it and then destake it whenever you want, because we wanted you to, usually when validators stake the token, that's the end of their involvement in the network, because they only waiting for yield.
Right. They can just take it and then like they get their advantages, and basically that's it.
Get the yield, whatever it is, and
yeah,
they get the money. No advantages, I guess. I mean, they get the money, basically, essentially.
Money is advantage.
Great.
Yeah, money is a great advantage for them, for sure.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. But here, but on Gosh, as I understand, and we will get it, we'll get a little later on it. Validators have the ability to stay much longer than 5 years if they wish to, because they have other interesting features going.
Well, no,
I think the most, I think the most important part here. Sorry, Polina, go ahead.
I'm sorry, like you speak, and I will. This is going to be my next question, so you can like talk more about it.
All right. So the thing is that there is a one caveat here. We said the biggest problem, okay, is that how you need to provide yield, right? You need to issue more tokens for validators to stay on the network, usually, right? In any network, doesn't matter, proof of stake, proof of work, right now, validators are miners. They constantly mine, and despite the fact that every 4 years the mining rewards on Bitcoin, for example, halves, the rise of the price make it up, and they still want to mine the next Bitcoin, right? It's still economical for them to mine next Bitcoin. But we said in the beforehand that we need to stop the emission. Nobody's saying this, actually. Like, no layer 1 protocol has ever, I think, said, this is the first time that someone said we will just completely stop the emission.
Because in Bitcoin, how it works, they're like halving, like every time, like the next Bitcoin is like they get less money, like twice get less money than before, right? That's how it works, but not completely stopped yet.
Well, it will stop. It will stop.
It will stop one time,
but
right?
Satoshi, well, it's actually
almost stop. Let's say.
No, it will stop completely, because there will be a point where to mine next Bitcoin, you will never mine next Bitcoin. It will take you until the end of the universe to solve the next puzzle. Okay. But that's okay. So Satoshi, what Satoshi predicted is that on certain day when the mining will diminish, it will be replaced by the fees that someone pays for transaction fees. Okay. So it will be replaced by transaction fees that the miner will get, right? And that will constitute their revenue from the point where there are no more Bitcoins mined. The reason actually mining was even created in the beginning by Satoshi, invented by Satoshi, is to incentivize the miners to start the network, to continue support the network before the level of transaction reaches a certain point where it no longer will be necessary to have that the mining, right? In Gosh, we are trying to compress that first of all to 5 years. We will only issue this amount of tokens, as we said, and the amount of tokens is actually locked. There are no more than 11 million tokens that will ever be issued to validators.
Right, yes, we forgot to discuss about it. We forgot to say that there is no...
We just didn't discuss it yet.
We didn't discuss it yet. Okay, so yes, 11 million goes to Validator, not a token more. So
my question was like, okay, they like lock these tokens for 5 years. What's next? Like after 5 years, there is no like interest in this anymore. So how are you gonna keep them on Gosh?
All right, so that's liquidity providing. So we're kind of mixing here a lot of DeFi protocols, and so we're saying the following. So when you stake Gosh in Validator pool, you can issue, for every staked Gosh, you can issue a token called LV Gosh. And you can do two things with LV Gosh. You can either vote with this, like participate in governance, or you can provide liquidity in the decentralized exchange, which is part of the system called GEX. And this liquidity is used to support actually repositories on Gosh, which open source projects or whatever projects build their software on Gosh, and they can list the tokens of their repositories in the GEX repository and the GEX decentralized exchange. So when you can take your staked token and you can provide liquidity for different projects with a separate mechanism, which I don't know if we discussed today, but this mechanism allows every validator, whoever, you don't need to be a validator, but you need to stake your Gosh and get this LV Gosh tokens to provide liquidity for these projects. And when you provide liquidity, you mine the project tokens. So instead of transaction fees,
so you basically become an investor, basically.
You are an investor already.
Becoming an investor,
if you
sort of.
When you invest in, when you're buying a mining farm in Bitcoin, you are becoming an investor in Bitcoin, period. There's no question about it, right? And the cost of the mining farm is huge, as you know, right? So you invest upfront enormous amount of money, and you cannot sell it that easily, actually, right? It takes time and effort to sell the equipment if you want to exit. And so in a way, when Bitcoin miner kind of mined Bitcoin, he staked his money into Bitcoin mining equipment. And in proof of stake, you just stake that money without buying it equipment. Like you have some servers, but this is negligible cost. And so we say, okay, you need to, but you're still an investor. You're an investor in Bitcoin, or you're an investor in proof of stake. As a proof of stake validator, you're still an investor. So the question is not if you invest or not. The question is how you make money on this investment. And if you think about that, just make emission, it doesn't make a lot of sense, actually. Like Ethereum works on just providing emission, like emitting tokens every year to validators, right? To for them to, and Ethereum, by the way, will never stop. There is no such thing as diminishing mining rewards in Ethereum. So it's like constant or whatever. And this doesn't make a lot of sense because okay, you introduce inflation into the system, which you want to be deflationary. As we said before, you need two tokens, remember. So it's a mixed up thing, and I don't think it works. Actually, Like the only thing why it works is because when you have certain amount of tokens, you participate in kind of having transaction fees as well, right? And that gives you this economical, that gives it some economical sense. But we said here we wanted to, let's eliminate the mining, let's eliminate the emission, and then let's eliminate the fees for a second. Let's just eliminate the fees from the whole equation. Now, what happens then? Well, if you stake your token, if you believe that you start to earn some yield, you believe in the platform, you believe in the Gosh price, right? If you're an investor, you believe in Gosh price. So you lock this token in validation, give you a boost, we call it staking boost, for 5 years, 11 million tokens. But then if you want to continue to support the network, you actually need to, what is the network? What is the value of the network? The value of the network is actually, we believe, the value of the projects using this network. All right. If you're Git, if you're Git on chain, the value of Git on chain is in the projects, in the open source repositories or closed source repositories, which are using this Git on chain for different reasons, which we're not going to discuss today why they would use it, but that's not the point. Okay, so if you believe that people will use this, or people are using this, you can see that, and then you want to capitalize on them. So how you capitalize on them? You can take the fees from their transaction. That would usually everyone doing, right? But we're saying, right? But we're saying, actually own part of this project. You can own part of the project without actually going to fees. You don't need their fees. You can actually own their tokens. And so if the project want to list their tokens, basically listing means give it to the hands of investors. So if the project is interested in getting their token to the hands of investors, they can do that by listing that on GEX. And you as an investor, validator, whatever you call yourself, you can take your staked tokens and use it to provide liquidity. Basically, as a reward for providing liquidity, you get pieces of the tokens of these repositories. Right? Does it make sense?
That's interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. So, so projects, I'm just going to mention it briefly. So basically, projects will have an opportunity to receive fundings, right? Open source projects with Gosh Tokenomics, they have an ability to receive fundings through the whole.
Not just, Jenny, it's not just receive funding is a very generalized term, because you don't necessarily receive funding, okay? You can list your tokens and just find some buyers even without you receiving funding directly. So because you just want to, you may want just to promote a trade of your token. And so people that believe in your projects can participate by buying some projects, maybe even not from you. It's like what you do with IPO. Right? So there is an initial public offering where you sell your token to investors, but you can list it just without selling it to investors directly. And you just can allow everyone who has the token to list it, and then the investors can buy from them. You not necessarily need to issue tokens, new tokens to investors. There are myriads of ways to do that. So we allow that listing, decentralized listing of any repository who wishes. And when you create repository on Gosh, the DAO, which governed by the token of this repository, created just by default. Of course, you don't need to use these tokens to sell it or use it as a financial instrument, right?
But does any token, so you said a repository creates a DAO organization by itself automatically. Does any token that is going to be issued will end up on GEX, on the decentralized exchange? I'm just wondering. Can end up. Okay. What are the criteria? Just in few words.
There are. It's basically just what you want. So you as a repository owner means your repository is owned by the token holders of your repository. This is the whole point. That's a repository DAO. So you as a DAO, all token holders, can decide that you want this token be available on GEX, that someone can sell and buy and sell these tokens of your repository. If you decided this, you vote for this. If you decided, it's just a commit in Git.
Okay, so just a commit. It doesn't. There is just a commit, so it's actually
you just create that commit. Well, there is a metric. One metric is it should be FDAO. So, okay, FDAO means a fair DAO protocol, and that we have a slide for that, I think. So fair DAO protocol is very simple protocol. It basically says that all the revenues that the token captures, doesn't matter whatever revenues there are. And again, if you are an open source repository, let's say, and you have some revenue generated on chain, for example, you sell some services around your repository or something, right? And you sell it on Gosh. And we will discuss. We will discuss later when we discuss Shell how you can actually sell it, like you sell today your services via whatever credit card. So let's say you sell some services on Gosh, and the payment, which is the payment in token, in any token, it can be Shell, it can be anything else, should arrive into some smart contract which is called FDAO reserve. And the FDAO reserve, the only way to get this token out of the reserve is to sell some tokens of your repository, some your DAO tokens, your project DAO tokens, towards this reserve, right? So
to burn
you
them,
exchange
basically.
to burn, you burn tokens in the reserve. In exchange, you get the proportional amount of the whatever accumulated revenues there is in this contract. This is very interesting dynamic, which basically provides the constantly rising. If the repository continue to sell some services, it will constantly, the reserve, the amount of tokens in reserve, the value in reserve will constantly rise. And because it will never fall, because when you burn tokens, so proportionally to every token, it will rise. Doesn't matter if you sell or not, if someone sells or not. All right.
Very interesting. So all the liquidity is going to be so basically everything DEX. It's, let's say, it's the heart, right? It's the decentralized exchange. All the tokens are going to be listed there. And
not all.
Validators.
You can decide. Not all of them.
Right.
You can decide if you want this token, your token, to be listed there. If your token follows the revenue model of FairDAO, then you're automatically enables listing, and the only thing that you need to do to list apart from FDAO is to have certain amount of liquidity. And that's exactly, so you basically create commit in the GEX repository with your token listing, and the repository will check automatically if that's FairDAO. And if it's FairDAO, it will immediately create a notification to all LVGosh token holders that you can actually vote for. It will start a voting period for this, token holders, LVGosh token holders, to vote for providing liquidity or not. And if they pass the threshold of this liquidity, then the token will automatically list.
My curiosity, everything is going to be already automatically. So if we see that the project repository is having a fair DAO, they're getting things done, they're selling, right? They're selling their service. So automatically, as you said, all the holder of the LVGosh token will be notified. So everything is going to be in the system built in already. So it's
because the LVGosh token holders, they have notification. They're automatically subscribed to the notification of the Gosh repository and GEX repository. So when the GEX submits the project, it commits its project basically to GEX repository, and when it's done, then the voting starts. automatically.
Okay, interesting. So the voting through soft cooperative voting mechanism, right? That we will not discuss it today, but so
we can discuss it very briefly.
We can go. Yes, please.
Right. Soft cooperating voting is a special mechanism where every token holder vote for the project, but they participate proportionally to their holding. So if it passes threshold, then everyone will commit the percentage of their holding into the amount that was voted for. So if you have if the SCV voting was for, I don't know, providing liquidity in the range of 100,000, for example, Gosh tokens, actually shells, because the pair is shell against the project token, in the 100,000 shells, and you have 100,000 participants, which has, I don't know, equal amount of tokens. They will all contribute one token, one shell to the liquidity pair. Doesn't matter if some of them voted or not. If the collective decision was such that we allow that, and the collective decision reached the threshold of 100,000, for example, tokens, then everyone will automatically commit their proportional token holding into this liquidity pool.
Did you decide to make this particular model? What are the benefits?
Because this is the model which allows for a decentralized cooperation where not every participant need to participate. Because it answers the question how much. It's a quantitative decision. You can today there are no sorry. Have some. Today there is no voting mechanism. You can vote yes or no. You can reach some decision, yes or no, but you cannot reach a decision how much. The quantitative decision, there is no mechanism that we know that can reach quantitative decision. And soft cooperative voting, it's based on the work that I did with Andrei Lashin, that is providing the answer to the question how much. So if we want to decide, we're a fund, so we want to invest, we can easily create a voting and say, okay, do we want to invest in this project, right? But then we need to ask how much we want to invest in this project. So we can, of course, ask the question, do we want to invest 1 million in this project? But let's say, what about 1,000,005? So do we need additional voting to ask a question, do we want to invest 1,000,005? And so on and so on. So it's basically just, there was no mechanism to exactly answer the question how much. The SCV protocol allows us to not only vote for do we want to invest, but also how much do we want to invest. That's easy. Soft cooperative voting, as I said, is for quantitative decisions on how much, how many, and so on and so forth. When we don't know, when we have some quantity of something, we don't know what is the quantity that we want to provide. Soft majority voting is for binary decisions, yes or no, but with a twist. It solves for participation problem. We know that SCV also solves for participation problem, because again, in both of them are solving for participation problem for different. So what is the problem of participation? A lot of people just don't want to vote. They never vote on anything. They're passive, and we know that. Like the turnaround of any voting, any public voting, is very low, as we know. And the more stable the economy, the less people participate, right? We know that problem. So in soft majority voting, there is a mechanism which allows to reach, if there is a majority, like overwhelming majority of 10% of votes. Let's say if 10% of votes, everyone says yes, then we just say the decision is reached. Okay, so 10% participated.
There is a threshold, right?
it's moving threshold. So 10% participated, 90% didn't participate, but 10% said yes, all of them, it's yes. But if one vote said no, then we need to wait for more votes. And right, and it self-regulates itself until it reaches, if there is, for every yes vote, there is a no vote, then we have a problem here, right? We cannot decide, there is no majority, super majority. Then we need to, basically, the threshold will rise to 50%. And then the 51% will decide, like in normal voting. But that's not what usually happens. What usually happens is, usually, like, decision is overwhelmingly supported or overwhelmingly not supported. So if there is overwhelming support, we don't need to wait for 51% to reach that decision. Because statistically, actually, it is almost impossible that 10% of votes said yes, no one said no. But if we will continue voting, there will be like suddenly a majority that will say no.
It will change.
Just that won't happen. Okay. So that's the mechanism. This mechanism allows for active participants, if they agree, to reach the decision faster without waiting for everyone else. If they disagree, then they still will need for everyone else to vote until the point where, if it's 50-50 by the end, then the one vote will decide the last vote.
Very interesting. So we are talking about soft majority voting. So basically, soft majority voting, who will vote? I'm just curious. So the thing is that anyone, like
which are not, but you cannot vote for two.
Right.
So if one LV-GOSH token, you can either vote with the token on SMV for the decisions of the governance of the GOSH repository, the GOSH network, or you can stake it and provide liquidity with it on SCV.
So there is just one or another. No, you cannot do both. Okay, Mitja. So each DAO repository has its own token. Which voting mechanism do we use here?
SMV, like you do on GOSH. So it's everything is the same. Every repository by default, of course. I mean, you can create your own whatever DAO or token if you want, but by default, when repository is spawned, it creates DAO with the tokens, and the token mechanism, voting mechanism, is SMV, like you have on GOSH repository, same thing. So everyone votes with SMV. It's the most convenient way, because again, not everyone needs to vote.
Okay. Okay, so coming back to validators, as we know that they don't get the transaction fees. So where these transaction fees are actually going?
Okay. So transaction fees are paid in shell. So the actual basic token of the network is shell token. And obviously, the reason why is because we want people to, to make more transactions, and so we want to encourage the the payment of the gas fees, and for that, as we said before, we need this token to lose value, not to raise. So that's why we use shell for this. Okay, so everyone who wants to use GOSH, if they pay, they will pay in shell for transaction fees. But as we said in the beginning, we want to allow some free usage of the repository. So every token is, every repository has its own token. The SMV mechanism is used for governance of this repository. Then we talk about shell token and the transaction fees. Transaction fees are paid in shell because we want to encourage people to transact more, and for that we want the token that they pay for transaction fees to lose value, and that is shell. But we also want people not to pay fees. So how do we do that? Because remember, we started from this, and we went full cycle now. So we need to protect against spam, remember, right? And this was unsolvable up until now. We created something called free service area. And the free service area is the area where if the smart contract is placed in this area, this smart contract can transact with another smart contracts in the free service area only for free, without fees. Now, there are limits to this. Like in every think of, like in AWS, the server that you buy for free, or you take for free, you start for free, has limits. You cannot scale to 1 million customers. In Firebase, you have some limits on how many queries you can make or writes you can do to the database. So we will have the same limits. So basically, you have some limits that these contracts are operating on. Beyond that limits, you need to pay fees, to use the service, which is, I think, exactly what is expected from such service. But before that limit, you can spend as much as you want, and you can create as many accounts, free accounts, as you want, of course. But you cannot extract the value out of it. Basically, if you just create these accounts to, you cannot game the system, meaning that you won't be able to take out the value that is provided in the free service area out to your wallet and benefit from it. And so this is the idea. But it also,
unfortunately,
well, fortunately,
or fortunately,
yeah. But there is one more benefit in having the free service area enabled, and this is a very interesting one. Because you cannot extract value out of these tokens in free service area, these tokens immediately become completely utility token. Like, just think about that. There is no speculation here in this area. So when this token is within this area, it actually pure utility token. And as a pure utility token, it can be used solely as the unit of account, right? It doesn't store value, and it doesn't used as a value exchange. So it's not a payment system anymore, and it's not an investment system anymore. It's just a unit of account. Now, the unit of account allows you to actually transact with the fiat world. Because remember, in fiat world, like if you want to transact with dollars, you cannot have the speculative part, which is the investment part, and you cannot have the payment part, the money part. Because then if you have them, then the regulator will tell you, wait, this is cryptocurrency. And if you have a cryptocurrency, in order to connect the cryptocurrency with the fiat world, you will need to pass through the whole bonanza of of the AML, KYC, whatnot, which makes it absolutely impossible, basically, to use it if you are not a financial institution. But if we take that out, we then say it's a utility token, meaning it is not cryptocurrency anymore. When the token passes to this area, it becomes utility token, not cryptocurrency. And that allows it to immediately be connected to any payment gateway, and you don't need any KYC AML. So if you want to take money from your customers in a normal way through accepting, for example, credit card, debit card, you can immediately do that. And we actually have the payment gateway built into the free service area. So if you want to collect money for your repository, like, for example, I don't know, donations or anything like that, for someone to that uses your repository, or you want to, your customers to pay for services that you provide, you can issue invoices and get the payments through this payment gateway to the free service area.
Well, it's quite convenient then. You don't have to buy you don't have to do that extra thing, like to buy tokens to pay and so on. So
yeah, exactly.
You can, just directly use your credit card.
Exactly. And you don't need, and it doesn't matter how much you pay, and you don't need to AML KYC services.
And also that's something that's already been structured into. So I mean, developers usually do pay with their credit cards. It's for example, it's their business, let's say, credit card, right? So
quite convenient, yeah.
Shall we sum up? Shall we open up the whole scheme of tokenomics? If you can show it on your screen and just go briefly through all the segments.
But you can.
But so, we will see it anyway.
Yeah. I don't have actually this scheme because it's really big. Because actually, if you take all everything that you can see probably on your screen now, if you can take everything we discussed today, all the pieces of this tokenomics, it's quite complex picture. But if you take it one by one, right, it's a subsystems of the whole system, which make kind of a total closed system of the subsystems. But each of the subsystems makes sense, I think. And each of them has a different purpose. It's like an engine.
Right. So very interesting.
I think what we didn't discuss actually today is only one thing, and that's the numbers. I think that may be important. Right?
Yes.
So I can go over this very quickly. So the total supply of GOSH tokens is 100 million. Okay, total amount ever be minted. And it may go lower than that, actually, if, for example, for some reason, like some validators will be less validators within this 5 years. I don't know why, but theoretically it could go down because it's always up to a certain number. So then there is like 67 million of these GOSH tokens will go towards the development of the network and research and of the GOSH product at the whole ecosystem in general. And of course, then 11 million, as we said, will go to the boost
program.
Validators. Yeah. And then of course there are some tokens that will go into and be sold to people who would like to provide support for GOSH project, and or to validators that want to validate, or just people who want to participate. That's
GOSH token is going to be listed on GEX, right?
Well, of course it will going to be listed on GEX. Is exactly the same mechanism as was described today. So GOSH is just another repository on GOSH. As such, it has a DAO and has token. And this token, by the decision of the DAO, which is not yet reached, of course, but we will be able, whoever has GOSH tokens, be able to vote for this, can be listed on GEX. And then the validators would be able to provide liquidity for that on GEX.
Okay, so shall we discuss the pricing on GOSH? Maybe it's interesting as well for those developers who are watching us today.
Well, the pricing is of course something which the prices right now it's in a private kind of round of financing, and the price is around $3 per token currently. If it will be listed, then the price will be determined by the market. It is important to mention that the 67 million that I have said when it goes to ecosystem development and everything, it actually is not released at any given moment. Like even if it's issued to some developers, for example, it will go towards like a vesting scheme, which is a 5 years vesting scheme, which will be released slowly. So the available tokens on the market will be always like thin, and the amount of these tokens will grow very slowly over 5 years. So again, until the ecosystem balances, and it balances when, like we have, remember that the last token vested will be also the last token issued ever. And that will balance the price, because again, we want the token to rise in value because it's a value storing token, and because we want people to participate in the ecosystem. As we said before, you need to vote for the repositories, you need to provide liquidity. So we need you to hold these tokens, and in order to do that, obviously the token expectations of price should be that it will capture value over time, so it will rise over time. And in order not to create oversupply on the market on any point, even when we mint the token and give the token to developers for their kind of participation in ecosystem. For example, if they their commit is accepted to the Gosh repository, they get some tokens. But these tokens are still vested over a long period of time, 5 years, and released, slowly.
So this, just coming back to Gosh in general revenue model, is it a real working revenue model? So because as we know, today on blockchain, we do have probably not even one project that has a real revenue model, let's say, that does give a service. Let's call it.
Well, we believe that Gosh is the only actually real product on the blockchain, on any blockchain today. Because all the rest of the blockchain products are either token sale ICOs or like the DeFi on the financial services on top of them. There are almost no use case, real use case for blockchain. We believe that Gosh is the largest use case up to date to the blockchain in general. So as such, it does have intrinsic value in the token itself and the prop, because it has a product. Now, in terms of pricing for the Gosh itself, for the Gosh products, it's very simple, and we just follow again the business model of any cloud, Git cloud providing, for example, right? So we have the free part of the service, as we said, like the unlimited repositories, the unlimited users in these repositories, the DAO itself, and so on, the CI/CD basics for CI/CD on Gosh, and so on. And then you have the subscription, $15 a month subscription, which includes some services where, for example, you store large files, like more than 10 gigabyte of storage in your repository, some advanced management tools, some other features that you might want to use, or you just go crazy over limit with the amount of users you have in your repository for writing, like write users.
Is it a competitive price?
It is a competitive price. It is exactly
right?
like any other. Yeah, it is exactly like any other Git cloud, cost today. GitLab or GitHub, they all charge more or less the same amount.
I see.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you, Mitja.
Gosh. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and again, let's we talk in other time about why to choose Gosh. Here, this stream is right, and only about like tokenomics, how Gosh works economically.
Yeah, we do have another questions that we wanted to discuss. For example, next time we can go through Gosh features for developers. What projects can come on Gosh? Why developers likely want to choose Gosh instead of any other Git hosting platform? Because there are very interesting points that makes Gosh unique, and so
we will have another stream on 24th, right, with some interesting people.
Yes.
Yeah. We do have a stream on 24th.
We're gonna talk more, about the Gosh itself, about features,
about Gosh, Gosh product and Gosh blockchain in general. Today we covered tokenomics. Thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for joining us today. So sorry for any interruption.